Hello, everyone. I'm Dane.
And I'm Kamraun. Welcome to the Malazan Brotherhood podcast, home of the world's most professional digressors.
Holy smokes. That's quite a title you've given yourself there.
Name one better.
I guess I can off the top of my head. All right. Today we will be discussing Book 1, Chapter 4 of House of Chains, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is part 1 of our coverage of this chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it is most definitely not a replacement to reading the books.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those who have not read the books. We will try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
Today's episode contains extreme violence, and thus is not suitable for children.
Our show is listener-supported. If you would like to support us, we would really appreciate that. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we are posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we'd really like to hear from you. Send any feedback or comments to contact@horsefrogproductions.com. All right, we received a comment from one of our longtime Patreon subscribers named Mike C.
All right, Mike C.
Mike had a comment about the fossil that Keeper was excavating. We both discussed how we thought it looked, and Dane, you thought it looked like...
A bit like a Denrabi, yeah, some kind of a sea monster.
Yeah, potentially a Denrabi.
Right.
And I interpreted it as a T-Rex-like creature. Mike says, thinking that it is a Denrabi-esque creature is not an unreasonable thought, given that Keeper refers to it as a quote-unquote Leviathan. So I think there was the mention of a serpentine-like tail as well as they were walking up to the hut. I read the situation as there were a bunch of fossils in this wall, and some of them may have been from this creature. But there was also other life there, because I think they said there was a shell in there and some other things.
Right.
So I segmented the long serpentine, whatever it was in the wall, separate from this creature.
Well, everybody's left to their own interpretations,
Yeah.
I guess, and we've covered this before as well. Colors of lightning and shapes and thicknesses and all that kind of thing. But I will say, reading Mike's comment, I appreciate a little bit of backup, where he says that even after hearing the description of legs and tails, it can make you think back to the sea. And I think he does say, especially on a first read-through. So, I appreciate that.
I don't recall heavily criticizing you about this.
Well, you're not too heavy-handed with it, but at this point in our relationship, you're very good at subtle needling. So.
Okay. Well, I guess with a Denrabi, I wonder what a fossilized Denrabi would look like. When I think of a Denrabi, the closest thing I can think of is from Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, the huge fire centipede that lives in the volcano. It's one of the early bosses that you fight. I know Denrabi aren't spitting lava or living in lava or fire, but it's like a large centipede with pincers on its mouth, some type of insect-like creature with chitinous plates covering it. I guess a Denrabi wouldn't look like it has vertebra to me because it has a carapace. So that's why I didn't immediately go there.
Okay. I see where you're coming from. Reading through quickly, I gloss over a lot of that stuff. One of the things, the arms, even though it is explicitly stated like the front arms, and yes, T-Rex-like, and once you see some of the other description, that does come into more of a picture. But also through evolution, sometimes you end up with tiny little arms or appendages that aren't really needed, but they're maybe still there. So he could be arthropod-like, but still have not shed useless little front arms, so they're just kind of dangling along. I don't know. Either way, I'm sticking with my initial thought as I was reading through, but...
Yeah, that's fine. In a world where the Segula are pirates, and there's red lightning all over the place, completely reasonable.
To each his own.
All right, so this was another interesting thing that Mike brought up. When do we start worrying about long-term issues for Karsa and his losing consciousness? It seems to be coming more and more frequently.
This is true, and I hadn't really thought about it until reading that comment. I had to do a little digging real quick. It looks like at least 10 or 11 times that he has lost consciousness.
I remember 2 or 3 big ones, and I guess I'm glossing over some of the other ones.
So a lot of it is exhaustion and things like that, but he was impaled in Silver Lake when he fell through the warehouse floor. During the recapture by the Malazans, attempting to break through the sorceress net, he was hit with a shovel. Exhaustion on the wagon. He succumbed to his injuries and he started to, fade away into unconsciousness. Forced intoxication when he was on the ship and they forced him to drink a fiery burning liquid that caused him to, pass out. He was then the one that I remember vividly, the Vision with his Slayer's train and everything. Impact with the sea when he was chained to the platform and he was thrown from the ship. That impact made him pass out. Let's see.
Torvald releasing him, moving his limbs. He passed out again.
Then, let's see here. Keeper punches him. He passes out. Then there's another.
They tattooed his face.
Hold on. This one I'm not sure about. This one says resetting limbs. I don't remember anything.
Yeah, resetting limbs is when he's moving. Like Torvald's moving his joints. That's the one.
Okay.
And then when his face got tattooed, he woke up.
Yep,
and that's another one. Yep. I did not realize how many times. This is a great point, Mike.
Yeah, post catfish. After he battled the catfish, he passed out again. Yeah, these other two.
Dude.
These other two haven't.
He's got a fainting syndrome or something.
Yeah,
I mean, he's a fainting goat.
Yeah. This is like one of those situations where you're a football player. You get concussed too many times. You got to retire.
Dude, he's got CTE. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
There's a lot more than I thought. I agree with you. I was thinking, well, what's it been? Like 2 or 3 times? Yeah. But apparently a lot more.
Our link when he passed out to the visions that he has.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's all these other injuries that are causing it. And hopefully the Teblor are a lot more resilient than normal humans in this regard. Wow, what a great point.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Well, thanks, Mike. We really appreciate the comments and no stank from me on the Denrabi view. We really appreciate your support on Patreon. Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks again, Mike.
All right, Chapter 4, Part 1. The chapter begins with a quote. Has a drowned Napin's body ever surfaced? End quote. And this is from Empress Lacine to High Mage Taishrin, following the disappearances. Life of Empress Lacine by Abelard. This is quite a timely quote after our introduction to Keeper last chapter. More evidence to hint that Keeper is more than he seems and was in some way tied to Lacine. The more we learn about these people that were in the Old Guard, the more intrigued I am by their capabilities. Keeper exhibited ascendant-level strength when he punched Karsa.
Yeah, he did indeed. And it is fortuitous, isn't it? This little quote. It's another one of those little nuggets that gets dropped, and you just want to know what's going on here. How is he tied in? And like you say, what is he capable of?
Mm-hmm. There were villages on the coastal road, usually set on the inland side, as if the inhabitants sought nothing from the sea. A scattering of adobe dwellings, flimsy corrals, goats, dogs, and dark-skinned figures hidden within swaths of full-length, sun-bleached cloth. Shadowed faces tracked Karsa and Torvald from doorways, but otherwise made no move. On the 4th day, in the 5th of such villages, they found a merchant's wagon drawn up in the virtually empty market square, and Torvald managed to purchase, for a handful of silver, an antique sword, top-heavy and sharply curved. I'm going to pause here. Dane, as the resident bladed weapons expert, any insights into what type of weapon this could be?
Try and put me on the spot here.
I'm deferring to your expertise.
When I think of something like this, I guess it would fall into either kukri, which I feel like is probably shorter, or like a tulwar, a little bit longer. That's kind of what I think. If it says top heavy, I'm thinking of just extra mass on the top. So that's kind of what pops into my head. What did you think?
Something similar. I think in a couple of paragraphs, it's mentioned that it's a scimitar, similar to a tulwar. How different are those two?
So a tulwar is a specific type of Indian curved sword, while the scimitar is a broad European term for kind of curved blades from the Middle East. So from places like Persia, Turkey, India, think like that. So that's really the main differences.
So hierarchically, the tulwar would roll into the scimitar.
I think, yes, it would be kind of the subclass, but that's what they would call it from places like India.
Okay, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
The merchant had bolts of cloth for sale as well, but nothing already made into clothing. The sword's handle fell apart shortly afterwards. After a lengthy and rather elaborate string of curses, Torvald said, I need to find a woodcarver, and I'd swear that merchant understood Malazan even as bad as I speak it. He just wouldn't admit to that fact.
This makes me laugh. I'm sure many of us have had these types of interactions, trying to get help from somebody, only to be met with, No English or, any other dismissive gesture, even though, just like Torvald, you're sure that that's not true.
There is a definite benefit to these merchants pretending to have a language barrier. I feel like, especially when they have something that you need. So I've mentioned before that I'm half Persian. In the 3rd grade, I went to Iran and we went to the bazaar, and watching my dad and my uncles haggle, it's a skill that Americans generally don't have, because it's like, oh, this is the price, but like there, it's all about these relationships, and then you're trying not to get ripped off. And it was really fun to watch.
We went to Mexico on a family vacation once, and my father loved this aspect of haggling. And he would get so into it. And somebody else, like my sister or I, would come up to him in the middle of his negotiations while he's trying to barter to get 50 cents less on some pair of leather huaraches or something like that. And he's like, "You're messing up the deal. You're bringing in new stuff. Get out of here." And I don't know if he ever actually was good at it, but he certainly enjoyed the process.
This situation with this merchant reminded me of the Dead Alewives Dungeons and Dragons skit that I've referenced before. Do you wish to haggle with the blacksmith? And when the handle broke, it's like the blacksmith selling them the non-magical sword.
Yeah. That's such a good one.
In case anyone doesn't remember that or hasn't heard of that, there's this comedy troupe that had a couple of audio recordings where they were role-playing a Dungeons and Dragons skit. I'll put the links to those episodes in our description of this episode. If you're listening to us, you'd probably enjoy this humor because it's right up our alley. Absolutely hilarious. And this reminds me of that a lot.
That's one of those, I forget about it from time to time. And then if you ever want a good laugh, it's just like, let me go and re-listen to that because it's going to put a smile on my face 100%.
They were once more walking down the road, the sun overhead fiercely hot in a cloudless sky. The forest had thinned to either side, low, straggly, and dusty, allowing them a view of the turquoise water of the Odotaral Sea to their right, and the dun tones of the undulating horizon inland. Karsa shrugged and said, "The Malazan soldiers in Genevaris said the 7 cities was going to rebel against the occupiers. This is why the Teblor do not make conquests. Better that the enemy keeps his land, so that we may raid again and again." Torvald responded, shaking his head, "Not the imperial way. Possession and control, the two are like insatiable hungers for some people. Oh, no doubt the Malazans have thought up countless justifications for their wars of expansion. It's well known that 7 cities was a rat's warren of feuds and civil wars, leaving most of the population suffering and miserable and starving under the heels of fat warlords and corrupt priest kings. And that, with the Malazan conquest, the thugs ended up spiked to the city walls or on the run, and the wilder tribes no longer sweep down out of the hills to deliver mayhem on their more civilized kin. And the tyranny of the priesthoods was shattered, putting an end to human sacrifice and extortion. And of course, the merchants have never been richer or safer on these roads. So all in all, this land is rife for rebellion." Karsa stared at Torvald for a long moment and said, "Yes, I can see how that would be true." Torvald grinned and said, "You're learning, friend." Karsa said, "The lessons of civilization." Torvald said, "Just so. There's little value in seeking to find reasons for why people do what they do, or feel the way they feel. Hatred is a most pernicious weed, finding root in any kind of soil. It feeds on itself." Karsa said, "With words." Torvald said, "Indeed, with words. Form an opinion, say it often enough, and pretty soon everyone's saying it right back at you, and then it becomes a conviction, fed by unreasoning anger and defended with weapons of fear, at which point words become useless and you're left with a fight to the death." Karsa grunted and said, "A fight beyond death, I would say." Torvald said, "True enough, generation after generation." Karsa asked, "Are all the people of Darujistan like you, Torvald Nom?" Torvald replied, "More or less. Contentious bastards. We thrive on argument, meaning we never go past the stage of using words. We love words, Karsa, as much as you love cutting off heads and collecting ears and tongues. Walk down any street, in any district, and everyone you speak to will have a different opinion, no matter what the subject. Even the possibility of being conquered by the Malazans. I was thinking a moment ago, that shark, choking on Borg's body. I suspect, should Darujistan ever become part of the Malazan Empire, the Empire would be like that shark, and Darujistan like Borg. We'll choke the beast that swallows us." Karsa said, "The shark did not choke for very long." Torvald said, "That's because Borg was too dead to say anything about it." Karsa said, "An interesting distinction, Torvald Nom." Torvald said, "Well, of course, us Daru are subtle folk. With individuals like the eel, protecting Darujistan. I suspect Torvald is correct in that the Malazan Empire would have a really hard time absorbing Darujistan into its ranks.
Yeah, that's one of those, is the juice worth the squeeze? Once you get in there and it starts to become problematic, maybe you just run parallel to it instead of trying to absorb it.
Yeah, just let it be a city-state and doing its own thing.
Exactly.
They were approaching another village, this one distinct from the others they had walked through for having a low stone wall encircling it. 3 large limestone buildings rose from its center. Nearby was a pen crowded with goats, loudly complaining in the heat. Torvald commented as they came closer, "You'd think they'd be out wandering." Karsa said, "Unless they're about to be slaughtered." Torvald asked, "All of them?" Karsa sniffed the air and said, "I smell horses." Torvald said, "I don't see any." This is the second time that I recall Karsa's senses working better than Torvald's. He could also see better, as displayed during their little stint in the dory as they approached the seawall within the nascent. Do you think Teblor senses are significantly better than non-Teblor senses?
They seem to be. I feel like when Byroth and Delum were doing their hunt, I guess not their hunt, but when they were, out on their raid through Rathed Lands, and it was like, I can smell wet fur even though it hadn't rained. Like, there's all these little things that they were picking up on. They do seem to have a little bit of heightened senses in some regard. There was another instance where somebody asked, I think they were in the slave pit, and Torvald had asked Karsa if he could see in the dark.
Yes, and he could.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple instances that show that they do have a little bit heightened awareness and senses and stuff.
I wonder if it's also partially where they're living. So Torvald's from the city, and Karsa lives in the forest. What I'm thinking of specifically is, recently I saw an article about how women can see more colors than men, because historically, over time, I'm talking over thousands of years, they would be gathering and they would need to be able to differentiate between different colors of plants to see what's useful or not useful, what's poisonous or not poisonous. And it's funny because I've always been talking to my wife about colors. She's an artist, and then she's like, "That's not that color, that's this color." And now I'm pretending like I have a disability because I'm a man and I can't see as many colors as her. And it's not my fault you're a mantis shrimp and you can see like 16 million more colors than me or whatever,
That's fantastic.
The Teblor have been living in the forest, hunting, and I wonder if they have to have these heightened senses to do what they do, to hunt the animals, to be able to smell them, to be able to see where they've traveled through the forest. And so that may also be a contributing factor as well.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
The road narrowed at the wall, spanning a trench before passing through a crumbling, leaning arch. Karsa and Torvald crossed the bridge and passed under the arch, emerging onto the village's main street. There was no one in sight. Not entirely unusual, as the locals usually retreated into their homes at the Teblor's arrival, although in this case the doors of those dwellings were firmly shut, the windows shuttered. Karsa drew his bloodsword and said, "We have walked into an ambush." Torvald sighed, saying, "I think you are right." He had wrapped his sword's tang in spare leather strapping taken from the pack, a temporary and not entirely successful effort to make the weapon useful. The Daru now slid the scimitar from its cracked wooden scabbard. At the far end of the street, beyond the large buildings, horsemen now appeared. A dozen, then 2, then 3. They were covered from head to toe in loose, dark blue clothing, their faces hidden behind scarves. Short, recurved bows, arrows nocked. They were trained on Karsa and Torvald. Horse hooves from behind made them turn, to see a score more raiders coming through the archway, some with bows, others with lances. Karsa scowled and asked Torvald, "How effective are those tiny bows?" Torvald lowered his sword and replied, "Sufficient to punch arrows through chain. And we're wearing no armor in any case." A year ago, Karsa would have attacked nonetheless. Now he simply reslung his bloodsword.
I wonder about this decision. What do you think has gotten him to this point? Do you think it's maybe consideration for Torvald that in a conflict it would likely get him killed? Maybe something else? I'm not sure that he's loving the idea of being captured again, so I'm curious why he just relents.
It could be partly out of concern for Torvald, but I also suspect it's because the sheer numbers of people coming at them, as well as a lack of decent cover. At least within Silver Lake, there were a lot of buildings around that they could duck, dip, dive, and dodge between. But here, it seems like they're in the middle of nowhere. They have 50 or more knocked arrows pointing at them. Regardless of whether Karsa could survive that onslaught, I don't think he's wearing any of his padded leather armor right now.
Yeah.
He would get pincushion. Torvald would absolutely die. So he did agree to get Torvald to Erlatan. I'm thinking it's a combination of those two factors.
Okay. Maybe a slight bit of softening? I don't really think that's the case, though.
I think it's wisdom. Through the experiences he's had up to this point, he has probably now realized you don't always have to go all out initially. Maybe better opportunities will present themselves later. Don't take the stance that this is my last stand every time. You know, maybe I can be patient and then capitalize on something later.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay.
The riders behind them closed, then dismounted. A number approached with chains and shackles. Torvald muttered, "Beru fend, not again." Karsa shrugged. Neither resisted as the shackles were fitted onto their wrists and ankles. There was some difficulty in dealing with the Teblor in this matter. When the shackles clicked into place, they were so tight as to cut off the blood flow to Karsa's hands and feet. Torvald, watching, said in Malazan, "Those will need to be changed, lest he lose his appendages." A familiar voice from the entrance to one of the larger buildings said, "Hardly a consideration." Silgar, trailed by Damask, emerged onto the dusty street. He continued, "You will indeed lose your hands and feet, Karsa Orlong, which should effectively put an end to the threat you pose. Of course, this will do much to diminish your value as a slave, but I'm prepared to accept the loss." Tell me honestly here, how aggravated were you that Silgar showed up again?
I mean, reading through it, I let out an irritated sigh. It was definitely like,
this other...
But I didn't want to say anything about it, though, because, you know, what we talked about last week.
I felt it. I'm not going to lie. I'm like, this slimy bastard's back.
Yeah, back again. Like this little weasel. You just can't, like a leech. I hate him. He makes it so easy.
Yeah. Torvald demanded, "Is this how you repay saving your miserable lives?" Silgar said, "Why, yes, it is. Repayment. For the loss of most of my men. For the arrest by the Malazans. For countless other outrages which I won't bother listing, since these dear Arak tribesmen are rather far from home, and, given that they're somewhat less than welcome in this territory, they are impatient to depart." Karsa could no longer feel his hands and feet. As one of the Arak tribesmen pushed him forward, he stumbled, then fell to his knees. A thick knout cracked into the side of his head. Sudden rage gripped the Teblor. He lashed out his right arm, ripping the chain from an Arak's hands, and swung it full into the face of his attacker. The man screamed. The others closed in then, wielding their knouts, clubs made from black, braided hair, until Karsa fell senseless to the ground. When he finally regained consciousness, it was dusk. He had been tied to some sort of travois, which was in the process of being unhitched from a train of long-legged, lean horses. Karsa's face was a mass of bruises, his eyes almost swollen shut, his tongue and the inside of his mouth cut and nicked by his own teeth. He looked down at his hands. They were blue, the fingertips darkening to black. There were dead weights at the ends of his limbs, as were his feet.
This reminds me of falling asleep in a strange position, laying on your arms funny, they go dead. This is obviously on a whole other level, though.
I'm cringing. This is horrific. If I lay on my stomach with my arms over my head, like under my pillow, for example, guaranteed they're going to fall asleep. And sometimes that's happened. You didn't realize it. Your arm is dead weight. And I'm like, oh, God, how bad is this? It's not black and blue, and it does not feel good coming back.
I've tried to stop sleeping like that just because that inevitably happens. Arms in a funny spot. Also, these tribesmen, they go straight to hitting him.
Don't play around.
Yeah. These aren't the Malazan military, I guess, where they want to have a little chit-chat. They just want to smack him.
The tribesmen were making camp a short distance from the coastal road. To the west, at the horizon's very edge, was the dull yellow glow of a city. A half-dozen small, virtually smokeless fires had been lit by the Arak, using some sort of dung for fuel. Karsa saw, 20 paces distant, the slave master and Damask seated among a group of the tribesmen. The hearth closest to the Teblor was being used to cook suspended skewers of tubers and meat. Torvald sat nearby, working on something in the gloom. None of the Arak seemed to be paying the two slaves any attention. Karsa hissed. Torvald glanced over and whispered, "Don't know about you, but I'm damned hot. Got to get out of these clothes. I'm sure you are as well. I'll come over and help you in a moment." There was the faint sound of ripping seams. Torvald dragged his tunic free. Naked, he began edging closer to Karsa. He murmured, "At last. Don't bother trying to say anything, friend. I'm surprised you can even breathe, with the way they beat you. In any case, I need your clothes." He came up alongside the Teblor, spared a glance towards the tribesmen, none of whom had noticed him, then reached up and began tugging at Karsa's tunic. There was but a single seam, and it had already been stretched and sundered in places. As he worked, Torvald continued whispering. Small fires, smokeless, camping in a basin, despite the insects. talking in mumbles, very quiet, and Silgar's words earlier, that stupid gloat. Had the Arak understood him, they would probably have skinned the idiot on the spot. Well, from his stupidity was born my brilliance, as you'll soon see. It'll likely cost me my life, but I swear I'll be here even as a ghost, just to see what comes. Ah, done. Stop shivering. You're not helping things at all.
I love seeing these moments from Torvald. When you first meet him, he's a bandit leader, raiding and the like. By his own admission, not good at making friends. But this makes me think he might be on his own redemption arc as well.
I find it hard to imagine him as ever being a quote-unquote bad guy. He seems to have too soft of a heart to be a hard-nosed type of a leader.
Yeah, you might be right. He does seem a little soft. Yeah.
And part of me thinks that he was just the leader because he's really smart and clever.
Oh.
Look at all the pieces he put together here to figure out what's going on with this tribe here and what he's about to do.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of observation skills and outside knowledge of certain behaviors of these tribesmen to really put that all together.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
Torvald pulled the tattered tunic from Karsa, then took it with him back to his original position. He then tore handfuls of grasses from the ground until he had 2 large piles. Bundling both pieces of tunic, he then stuffed them with the grass. Flashing Karsa a grin, he crawled over to the nearest hearth, bundles in tow. He pushed them up against the glowing fragments of dung, then retreated. Karsa watched as first one caught fire, then the other. Flames flared into the night, a roar of sparks and snake-like blades of grass lifting high. Shouts from the Arak, figures rushing over, scrambling for handfuls of earth, but there was little of that in the basin, only pebbles and hard, sun-dried clay. Horse blankets were found, thrown over the roaring flames. The panic that then swept through the tribesmen left the 2 slaves virtually ignored, as the Arak rushed to break camp, repack supplies, saddle their horses. Through it all, Karsa heard a single word repeated numerous times, a word filled with fear. Grawl.
Do we know anything about the Arak? We know the Grawl have a pretty fierce reputation, but the reaction of the Arak, it makes me think maybe compared to the Urid, the Urid compared to other tribes, that the Grawl are top dog among the tribes.
We do know about the Arak.
Okay.
This is the same tribe that were so impressed with Fiddler's Grawl gelding. And he, Crocus, and Apsalar spent a little time with them before they had to flee the Grawl that were chasing them, because Fiddler was pretending to be a Grawl, and that became a problem because the Grawl took issue with that.
Okay.
Here, it was mentioned that the Arak were out of their territory. Maybe the Grawl are a rival tribe, and they vastly outnumber the Arak in this region. And so I think that's likely what's going on. They're far from home, and in those scenarios, you'd probably be outnumbered.
I guess that makes sense with what Torvald just said a few paragraphs ago about them being in a hurry, wanting to get the heck out of there. So yeah, that ties it in nice.
The Grawl do have that reputation of the curses and the blood feuds. So I don't know if these other tribes have that attitude.
Yeah. The Grawl have nastier horses for sure. You never hear about an Arak tribesman's horse,
never
being ill-tempered.
Not once was it mentioned. Silgar appeared as the Arak gathered their horses. His face was filled with fury. Silgar said, "For that, Torvald Nam, you have just forfeited your life." Torvald gave him a hard grin and said, "You won't make it to Erlitan." 3 tribesmen were approaching, hook-bladed knives in their hands. Silgar said, "I will enjoy watching your throat cut." Torvald replied, "The Grawl have been after these bastards all this time, slave master. Hadn't you realized that? Now, I've heard of the Grawl, but your Arak friends have one and all pissed onto their hearths, and even a Daru like me knows what that means. They don't expect to live through the night, and not one of them wants to spill his bladder when he dies. 7 cities taboo, I gather." This is the stuff that makes me love these books so much. This detail about the Arak pissing into the fire because they don't want to soil themselves when they die is so on point for an anthropologist. This is the distinction between crap fantasy and amazing fantasy. The world is alive and it has a history. You have superstitions, you have things that cultures do that have built up over time. And when I complain about certain authors, I generally don't do it that much on this podcast, but let's just take Frank Herbert, for example. Love Frank Herbert's writing. At some point, his son and another author had to take over, and you could feel the loss Frank Herbert was not an anthropologist, but the way he wrote, you could feel the loss immediately. And I feel like this is one of those distinctions where the way the author builds the world up, so it has that history and the feel to it, instead of this happens, then this happens, then this happens. You know, It's not something that has been built like this.
I've told you before, from my first time opening and reading Gardens of the Moon, and the way things are described, specifically the first time magic is described, having a feel, having a taste, like tasting iron on your tongue. These are things I've never heard in other books when they describe magic or whatever. And so this section here is the exact same thing. Like you said, a lived-in world with all of these types of little nuggets that are placed in to just make it feel very realistic, even though it's a fantasy story. Yes, I agree 100%. Love this stuff.
The first Iraq reached Torvald, one hand snapping out to take the Daru by the hair, pushing Torvald's head back and lifting the knife. The ridgeline behind the Iraq was suddenly swarming with dark figures, silently sweeping down into the camp. The night was broken by screams. The Iraq crouched before Torvald, snarled, and tore the knife across the Daru's throat. Blood spattered the hard clay. Straightening, the tribesman wheeled to run for his horse. He managed not a single step, for a half-dozen shapes came out of the darkness, silent as wraiths. There was a strange whipping sound, and Karsa saw the Iraq's head roll from his shoulders. His two companions were both down.
This is terrible. I had completely forgotten about this, and my heart sank reading it.
Yeah, I don't know how you survive this. Knife across the throat like that.
Yeah.
Blood spattering the ground. Ugh.
You assume that that's the end.
Yeah.
You'd have to. You don't really see people taking throat slits well.
No, especially not in this world. I mean, not in any world, but like, there's no healer here. You know, like, how do you survive this?
Right.
Silgar was already fleeing. As a figure rose before him, he lashed out. A wave of sorcery struck the attacker, dropped the man to the ground, where he writhed in the grip of crackling magic for a moment, before his flesh exploded. Ululating cries pealed through the air. The same whipping sound sang in the darkness from all sides. Horses screamed. Karsa dragged his gaze from the scene of slaughter and looked over at Torvald's slumped body. To his amazement, the Daru was still moving, feet kicking furrows in the pebbles, both hands up at his throat. Silgar returned to Karsa's position, his lean face gleaming with sweat. Damask appeared behind him, and the slave master gestured the tattooed guard forward. Damask held a knife. He quickly cut at the bindings holding Karsa to the travois and hissed, "No easy out for you. We're leaving, by Warren, and we're taking you with us. Silgar's decided to make you his plaything. A lifetime of torture." Silgar snapped, "Enough babbling! They're almost all dead! Hurry!" Damask cut the last rope. Karsa laughed, then managed to form words. "What would you have me do now? Run?" Snarling, Silgar moved closer. There was a flare of blue light. Then the three of them were plunging into fetid, warm water.
Did Silgar just make a portal out of there? I thought he had said before he could not make a portal to get out of the nascent, but he could make use of what was left behind.
Do you think it's possible that he wasn't near the sea in the nascent and he couldn't access his Warren enough to make a portal? And now they're in his realm where they have the sea, because Male is the god of the oceans on this world. Do you think that's reasonable, or is that too much?
I mean, I don't really know all of the inner workings, and maybe it is mysterious, but it seems plausible because that water was there. It wasn't supposed to be there, but it wasn't actually ocean. It's fresh water, they said. So I suppose, for argument's sake, that makes good sense. Maybe he's also just a liar because he said he didn't have the skill.
If he could have gotten them out of there, he would have before he had to eat one of his people.
Yeah.
I really think that they wouldn't have been starving and stuck there. He would have just opened it immediately, gotten out of there.
Yeah, to keep the ruse going.
That's great. What a pull. Oh my God. Unable to swim, the weight of his chains dragging him down, Karsa sank into the midnight depths. He felt a tug on his chains, then saw a second flash of lurid light. His head, then his back, struck hard cobbles. Dazed, he rolled onto his side. Silgar and Damask, both coughing, knelt nearby. They were on a street, flanked on one side by enormous warehouses, and on the other by stone jetties and moored ships. At the moment, there was no one else in sight. Silgar spat and said, "Damask, get those shackles off him. He bears no criminal brand, so the Malazans won't see him as a slave. I won't be arrested again, not after all this. The bastard is ours, but we've got to get him off the street. We've got to hide." Karsa watched Damask crawl to his side, fumbling with keys. Watched as the Nathi unlocked the shackles on his wrists, then his ankles. A moment later, the pain struck as blood flowed into near-dead flesh. The Teblor screamed. Silgar unleashed magic once more, a wave that descended on the Teblor like a blanket, that he tore off with unthinking ease. his shrieks slicing into the night air, echoing back from nearby buildings, ringing out across the crowded harbor. "You there!" Malazan words, a bellow, then the swiftly approaching clash and clatter of armored soldiers. Silgar hastily said, "An escaped slave, sirs. We have, as you can see, just recaptured him." A soldier said, "Escaped slave? Let's see his brand." Those were the last words Karsa registered, as the pain in his hands and feet sent him plummeting into oblivion. Karsa awoke to Malazan words being spoken directly above him. The voice said, "Extraordinary. I've never seen natural healing such as this. His hands and feet, those shackles were on for some time, Sergeant. On a normal man, I'd be cutting them off right now." The sergeant asked, "Are all Fen such as this one?" The first man said, "Not that I've ever heard, assuming he's Fen." The sergeant asked, "Well, what else would he be?" "He's as tall as 2 Dalhanese put together." The first man replied, "I wouldn't know, Sergeant. Before I was posted here, the only place I knew well was 6 twisting streets in Li Hang. Even then, Fen was just a name, and some vague description about them being giants. Giants no one's seen for decades at that. The point is, this slave was in bad shape when you first brought him in, beaten pretty fierce, and someone punched him in the ribs hard enough to crack bones. Wouldn't want to cross whoever that was. For all that, the swelling's already down on his face, despite what I've just done to it, and the bruises are damn near fading in front of our eyes." Continuing to feign unconsciousness, Karsa listened to the speakers stepping back, then the sergeant asking, "So the bastard's not in danger of dying then?" The first man said, "Not that I can see." The sergeant said, "Good enough, healer. You can return to the barracks." The first man replied, "Aye, sir." Various movement, boots on flagstones, the clang of an iron-barred door, then, as these echoes dwindled, the Teblor heard, closer by, the sound of breathing. In the distance there was some shouting, faint and muted by intervening walls of stone, yet Karsa thought he recognized the voice, as belonging to the slave-master, Silgar. The Teblor opened his eyes. A low, smoke-stained ceiling, not high enough to permit him to stand upright. He was lying on a straw-littered, greasy floor. There was virtually no light, apart from a dim glow reaching in from the walkway beyond the barred door. His face hurt, a strange, stinging sensation prickling on his cheeks, forehead, and along his jaw. Karsa sat up. There was someone else in the small, windowless cell, hunched in a dark corner. The figure grunted and said something in one of the languages of the 7 cities. A dull ache remained in Karsa's hands and feet. The inside of his mouth was dry and felt burnt, as if he'd just swallowed hot sand. He rubbed at his tingling face. A moment later, the man tried Malazan, saying, "You'd likely understand me if you were Fen." Karsa said, "I understand you, but I am not one of these Fen." The man said, "I said it sounds like your master isn't enjoying his stay in the stocks." Karsa asked, "Has he been arrested?" The man replied, "Of course. The Malazans like arresting people. You'd no brand at the time. Keeping you as a slave is therefore illegal under imperial law." Karsa said, "Then they should release me." The man said, "Little chance of that. Your master confessed that you were being sent to the Odotaral mines. You were on a ship out of Genebaris that you'd cursed. Said curse then leading to the ship's destruction and the deaths of the crew and their marines. The local garrison is only half convinced by that tale, but that's sufficient. You are on your way to the island, as am I." Karsa rose. The low ceiling forced him to stand hunched over. He made his way, hobbling, to the barred door. The stranger said, "Aye, you could probably batter it down, but then you'll be cut down before you manage 3 steps from this jail. We're in the middle of the Malazan compound. Besides, we're about to be taken outside in any case, to join the prisoners' line chained to a wall. In the morning, they'll march us down to the Imperial jetty and load us onto a transport."
I was wondering, is this the same place, Heberick, Felicin, Baden, that they were chained and waiting to go to the Odotaral mines as well? Was that in Erlatan?
Based on my research, they were shipped from Unta to Odotaral Island. So This would be a circuitous route for them to go from Unta to Erlatan, then back to Odotaral Island, because you could just go directly there.
So maybe just a similar location, the same thing happening from different port cities.
Oh, yeah.
To end up in Odotaral.
Jails all over the place.
Yeah, okay, all right.
Karsa asked, "How long have I been unconscious?" The man said, "The night you were carried in, the day after, the next night. It's now midday." Karsa asked, "And the slave master has been in the stocks all this time?" The man replied, "Most of it." Karsa growled, "Good. What of his companion? The same?" The man said, "The same." Karsa asked, "And what crime have you committed?" The man replied, "I consort with dissidents. Of course, I am innocent." Karsa asked, "Can you not prove that?" The man said, "Prove what?" Karsa said, "Your innocence." The man said, "I could if I was." The Teblor glanced back at the figure crouched in the corner. He asked, "Are you, by any chance, from Darujistan?" The man replied, Darujistan? No, why do you ask? Karsa shrugged. He thought back to Torvald Nam's death. There was a coldness surrounding the memory, but he could sense all that it held at bay. The time for surrender, however, was not now. Is this the first time he's going to feel grief in his life?
Is that what you think this feeling is for him?
I think that's what it is. I think Torvald is actually maybe one of the most important people to him in his life now, throughout all his experiences, and he's not knowing what to do with this feeling.
Yeah, a new feeling creeping in.
Yeah.
I could see that for sure, because I agree with you fully that Torvald is somebody he actually considers a friend, and I can't think of him feeling that way about any other companions that he's had up to this point.
Yeah, because he went right to anger with Byroth and Delam. They betrayed me.
Yeah, right.
They died under my leadership, but they betrayed me.
Right. Yeah. He's not feeling that way about Torvald at all. So, yeah,
it's a different
I guess that
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
That distinction of him being the war leader for them versus Torvald being a companion, like a loyal companion, I think that's a new experience for him.
Yeah.
Maybe the Tevlor hierarchical structure didn't allow for these types of friendships and relationships.
Yeah. Since they're kind of a warring tribe,
you got to have the alpha dog in charge.
Isn't that kind of a similar thing why a lot of militaries don't like women in the ranks as far as like combat? Because something that it does subconsciously to the men in a combat situation, they see a woman dying and it kind of breaks them in a different way that if it's a man getting shot next to them, kind of softens them and makes them less soldier-like.
That's an incredibly complex scenario because there's a whole host of complications that come with women being in the field because they have different needs than men. And just in reality, when you're out in the field on those really long deployments, they're carrying rucks that are like 80 pounds or more, heavy rucks. There are some women that could do that, but most of the time, this is something that men have to do, right? You carry these heavy rucks for long distances, all your ammo, radios, whatever. It's just something that men are more capable of doing. And then I think it wears on women a lot more. But from the psychological piece, I don't know. Since I wasn't in the military, I've never been in combat. I'm not sure how it's different for men versus women, like dying. I would imagine if you go through boot camp and you train with somebody on a regular basis, men really bond that way.
Yeah.
Going through things together. So I would think that they would view a woman in a similar fashion of one of their close compatriots. And if they died, I don't know if it would be more psychologically damaging than if it was a man. I think it would probably be equal.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe I'm drawing on a incorrect inference.
But there is a protective instinct as well for men to protect women. So maybe that plays into it beforehand. But then again, like I was just listening to a story. It was Jocko's interview on Sean Ryan. And he was talking about that one guy, a grenade landed on a rooftop in Ramadi. The guy didn't even think about it, just jumped on it, and he ended up dying. It didn't matter if it was a man or a woman. It was his team.
Right.
He had to save them.
Okay.
It's a complex scenario.
Yeah.
Man, I went on for a long time.
Yeah. That's all right.
You sure?
I mean, if you listen back to it and you think that it doesn't fit, I guess.
Am I talking too much?
No. I like it. I mean, look what you got from one 8-word sentence, 9-word sentence. You got a 5-minute dialogue in there. You love the sound of your own voice. Let's see how you edit this.
I'm going to clip that. That needs to be on a soundboard. You love the sound of your own voice. Where are we? What episode are we? I need to pull this in. I'm going to edit that in. You love the sound of your own voice, don't you? The bar door was set in an iron frame, the frame fixed to the stone blocks with large iron bolts. The Tevlor gave it a shake. Dust sifted out from around the bolts, pattered onto the floor. The stranger watched Karsa and said, I see you're a man who ignores advice. Karsa said, these Malazans are careless. The man said, overconfident, I'd suggest. Then again, perhaps not. They've had dealings with Fen, with Trell, Bargast, a whole host of oversized barbarians. They're tough and sharper than they let on. They put an Odotarl anklet on that slave master. No magic from him anymore. Karsa turned, asking, what is this Odotarl everyone speaks of? The man said, a bane to magic. Karsa asked, and it must be mined? The man replied, yes, it's usually a powder, found in layers, like sandstone, resembles rust. Karsa murmured, we scrape a red powder from cliff sides to make our blood oil. And magic seems to have little to no effect on him.
Yeah. The pieces are coming together here.
The man asked, "What is blood oil?" Karsa said, "We rub it into our swords and into our armor. To bring on battle madness, we taste it." Karsa could feel the man's eyes on him. The stranger was silent for a moment, then asked, "And how well does magic work against you?" Karsa said, "Those who attack me with sorcery usually reveal surprise on their faces, just before I kill them." The man said, "Well now, that is interesting. It is believed that Odotarl is only found on the single large island east of here. The Empire controls its production, tightly. Their mages learned the hard way during the conquest, in the battles before the Talani Mass got involved. If not for the Talani Mass, the invasion would have failed. I have some more advice for you. Reveal nothing of this to the Malazans. If they discover there is another source of Odotarl, a source they do not control, well, they would send into your homeland, wherever that is, every regiment they possess. They will crush your people, utterly." Karsa shrugged, saying, "The Teblor have many enemies."
This sort of ambivalent response from Karsa, he really doesn't think, after what he's seen of these Malazans, that his tribe would have any issue with a Malazan invasion.
He probably has no conception of how vast the Malazan Empire truly is or how large their armies are. He's seen local companies, small parts of it. Think about that. You don't have the internet. You don't have TV. You have very little to no contact with the outside world. And you probably don't even know how big the world is.
Yeah. That's a good point. I guess if you look at Silver Lake, right? They still thought it was a village and a farmhouse.
Yeah.
You know, and how quickly it's grown. So you're probably right on the money there.
The stranger slowly sat straighter, saying, "Teblor? That is what you call yourselves? Teblor?" After a moment, he leaned back again and softly laughed. Karsa asked, "What do you find so amusing?" An outer door clanged open, and Karsa stepped back from the barred door as a squad of soldiers appeared. The three at the front had unsheathed their swords, while the four behind them held large, cocked crossbows. One of the swordsmen stepped up to the door. He paused upon seeing Karsa. The soldier called to his companions, "Careful, the savage has awakened." The soldier studied the Teblor and said, "Do nothing stupid, Fen. It matters nothing to us whether you live or die. The mines are crowded enough for them not to miss you. Understand me?" Karsa bared his teeth and said nothing. The soldier said, "You there, in the corner, on your feet. It's time for some sunshine." The stranger slowly straightened. He was wearing little more than rags, lean and dark-skinned. His eyes were a startling light blue. He said, "I demand a proper trial, as is my right under imperial law." The guardsman laughed and said, "Give it up. You've been identified. We know precisely who you are. Aye, your secret organization is not as seamless as you might think, betrayed by one of your own. How does that feel? Let's go. You come out first. Jib, you and Gulfstream keep your crossbows on that Fen. I don't like his smile, especially now." Another soldier said, "Oh look, you've confused the poor ox." The first soldier said, "Bet he doesn't even know his entire face is one big tattoo. Skrull did good work, though. Best I've seen in a long while."
This is another moment I had completely forgotten about. A detail that, of course, you read through and never think of again every time I picture Karsa. It's never that he's got this tattoo on his face. But that, I guess, kind of comes back to that little comment between Damask and Karsa and saying that he doesn't have a criminal brand. He's got no tattoos, so the Malazans won't see him as a slave. I'm thinking, is this how they kind of tie that together to justify he's a slave? Silgar's saying he's an escaped slave, so the Malazans give him the brand. That's why.
In another paragraph, it was mentioned that when Silgar confessed that they were on the way to the Odotarl mines already, that kind of makes it sound like Karsa has already been tried and convicted of some crimes and was already going to the Odotarl mines as a prisoner. So the next sentence is another one drawled, "Right. And how many escaped prisoner tattoos have you seen, Jib?" So this is an escaped prisoner tattoo, not a slave brand.
Okay.
Is how I took it.
Okay. That makes sense, I guess.
Another one drawled, "Right. And how many escaped prisoner tattoos have you seen, Jib?" The first soldier said, "Just one, and it's a work of art." The source of the stinging sensation on Karsa's face was revealed now. He reached up, seeking to feel something of the pattern, and slowly began tracing lines of slightly raised, damp strips of raw skin. They were not contiguous. He could make no sense of what the tattoo portrayed. The other prisoner walked over to the door, which the first guard had unlocked and swung open. As he said, "Shattered. The brand makes your face look like it's been shattered." You mentioned that you never think of his face being tattooed. This is one of the defining things for me about him is this shattered tattoo on his face.
Mhm.
But I'm questioning what I envision it as to what it actually is now. Because a shattered face could mean a number of things, like the structure of the face looking shattered, like it got punched and crumpled or something. I had always somehow come to the conclusion that it was like shattered glass or something, like
Okay.
shards of shattered glass. How do you envision this shattered tattoo looking?
That makes sense the way you're picturing it. But as I read through it and they talk about it, like I said, that image comes into my mind. And then throughout, any other time that we encounter Karsa, it is not with a tattoo. And I don't know why that is, but it's something that comes. It's obviously explained. It's talked about here, but then it just doesn't seem to stick for some reason.
Now that you've read this, what would you say it looks like?
I would have to agree. Sort of looking like a combination of shattered glass and spider web, just kind of like scrambled, jagged lines across the face.
Okay. 2 guards escorted the man outside, whilst the others, nervously eyeing Karsa, waited for their return. One of the crossbowmen, whose high forehead revealed white blotches, leading the Teblor to speculate that he was the one named Gullstream, leaned back against the opposite wall and said, "I don't know. I'm thinking Skrull made it too big. He was ugly enough to start with. Now he looks damn terrifying." Another guard drawled, "So what? There's plenty of hill-grubbing savages that carve up their own faces to frighten weak-kneed recruits like you, Gullstream. Bargast and Semk and Kundril. But they all break against a Malazan legion just the same." Gullstream said, "Well, ain't none of them being routed these days, though, are they?" The other guard said, "That's only because the fist's cowering in his keep and wants us all to put him in bed every night. Noble-born officers, what do you expect?" Gullstream suggested, "Might change when the reinforcements arrive. The Ashok regiment knows these parts." The other retorted, "And that's the problem. If this rebellion actually happens this time, who's to say they won't turn renegade? We could get smiling throats in our own barracks. It's bad enough with the Red Blades stirring things up in the streets." The guards returned. Gullstream said, "You, Fen, now it's your turn. Make it easy for us and it'll be easy for you. Walk, slow, not too close, and trust me, the mines ain't so bad, considering the alternatives. All right, come forward now." Karsa saw no reason to give them trouble. They emerged onto a sunlit compound. Thick, high walls surrounded the broad parade ground. A number of squat, solid-looking buildings projected out from 3 of the 4 walls. Along the 4th wall, there was a line of prisoners shackled to a heavy chain that ran its entire length, bolted to the foundation stones at regular intervals. Near the heavily fortified gate was a row of stocks, of which only 2 were occupied, Silgar and Damask. On the slave master's right ankle, there glinted a copper-colored ring. Neither man had lifted his head at Karsa's appearance, and the Teblor considered shouting to attract their attention. Instead, he simply bared his teeth at seeing their plight. As the guards escorted him to the line of chained prisoners, Karsa turned to the one named Jib and spoke in Malazan. "What will be the slave master's fate?" The man's helmed head jerked up in surprise. Then he shrugged and said, "Ain't been decided yet. He claims to be rich back in Genebakis."
I think I'm just as surprised. Karsa is a quick study, picking up languages fast, huh?
He does seem pretty intelligent. To have picked up Malazan from the sailors and, I guess, Daru from Torvald simultaneously on this whole journey. That's pretty wild.
Has he picked up Daru? Because I thought they've kind of been speaking Nathi this time, but maybe not.
Oh, no, you're right. Do we know what language they've been speaking this whole time? I guess it's been the Sunid Nathi dialect.
That's what I thought. But then when they encountered Keeper, I don't remember what Torvald started speaking with Keeper.
Speaking Daru.
He was speaking Daru.
Yeah.
And he said he noted a hint of a Malazan accent or something. Maybe he has picked up Daru. And I only recall them specifically talking about the Nathi language. And then now that he's picked up some Malazan. But either way, being able to by ear without any formal training or anything, just picking up languages, pretty good stuff.
Karsa sneered, saying, "He can buy his way out from his crimes, then." Jib said, "Not under Imperial law, if they're serious crimes, that is. Might be he'll just be fined. He may be a merchant who deals in flesh, but he's still a merchant. Always best to bleed him where it hurts most." Another guard growled, "Enough jawing, Jib." They approached one end of the line where oversized shackles had been attached. Once more, Karsa found himself in irons, though these were not tight enough to cause him pain. The Teblor noted that he was beside the blue-eyed native. The squad checked the fittings one more time, then marched away. There was no shade, though buckets of well water had been positioned at intervals down the line. Karsa remained standing for a time, then he finally settled down to sit with his back against the wall, matching the position of most of the other prisoners. There was little in the way of conversation as the day slowly dragged on. Towards late afternoon, shade finally reached them, though the relief was momentary, as biting flies soon descended. As the sky darkened overhead, the blue-eyed native stirred, then said in a low voice, "Giant, I have a proposal for you." Karsa grunted and asked, "What?" The man whispered, "It's said that the mining camps are corrupt, meaning one can carve out favors, make life easier. The kind of place where it pays to have someone guarding your back. I suggest a partnership." Karsa thought about it, then he nodded and said, "Agreed, but if you attempt to betray me, I will kill you." The man said, "I could see no other answer to betrayal." Karsa said, "I am done talking." The man replied, "Good, so am I."
I just wondered now, what do you think would happen when Karsa arrives at the mines and he's talking about favors and corruption? The size of Karsa compared to what we know about who was in the mines before. Who was the antagonist who was in charge? I always confuse his name with Boddens, but he kind of ran the camp in Skull Cup. If Karsa arrived, I would imagine that Karsa would be the new top dog in the mine. He could run that whole thing if he really wanted to, be the king of Skull Cup. Benneth.
So he functioned as the inside man for the camp's commander, Captain Sawark, in Skull Cup.
Okay,
and he claimed the title of King of Skull Cup. So I absolutely think Karsa would have taken over from this dude.
Usurp him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's no way. I don't even know what Benneth was, if he was a human or some other race.
He was human. He was just a big dude. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just a big guy. Yeah, Karsa would handle him easily.
Mm-hmm. Karsa thought to ask the man's name, but there would be time enough for that later. For now, he was content to stretch the silence, to give space for his thoughts. It seemed Urigal was willing him to these auditoral minds after all. Karsa would have preferred a more direct, a simpler journey, such as the one the Malazans had originally intended. Karsa thought, too many blood-soaked digressions, Urigal. Enough. Night arrived. A pair of soldiers appeared with lanterns and sauntered down the line of prisoners, checking the fetters one more time before heading off to the barracks. From where he slumped, Karsa could see a handful of soldiers stationed at the gate, whilst at least one patrolled the walkway along each wall. 2 more stood outside the steps of the headquarters. The Templar settled his head against the stone wall and closed his eyes. Sometime later he opened them again. He had slept. The sky was overcast, the compound a mottled pattern of light and darkness. Something had awoken him. He made to stand, but a hand stayed him. He looked over to see the native huddled motionless beside him, head lowered, as if still asleep. The hand on the Templar's arm tightened a moment, then withdrew. Frowning, Karsa settled back, and then he saw. The guards at the gate were gone, as were those outside the headquarters. Along the wall walkways, no one. Then, alongside a nearby building, movement. A figure sliding through shadows in silence, followed by another, padding along with far less stealth, one gloved hand reaching up to steady itself every now and then. The 2 were making directly for Karsa. Swathed in black cloth, the lead figure halted a few paces from the wall. The other moved up alongside it, then edged past. Hands lifted, slipped back a black hood. Torvald Nam.
Your boy isn't dead after all. He was just kidding.
Yeah, it's good to see him alive.
Yeah. Also, this other prisoner seems to be very observant as well, feigning sleep, but still paying attention to this rescue attempt, hoping he's going to be included, no doubt.
Oh yeah, you'd piggyback on that.
Oh yeah.
I wonder how Torvald got in here and facilitated this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to stop there, and we'll pick up the chapter where we left off next week for standout moments.
Karsa and Torvald recaptured again, and by Silgar, no less.
Your boy.
These 2 are having some bad luck getting away.
Yeah, you hate to see it, but this is quite the journey for Karsa.
Quite.
Torvald's clever idea in exposing their position to the Grawl so that Iraq would be attacked. What a slippery fellow.
Yeah, that was a real stroke of genius that he, like you talked about earlier, put those pieces together, that they were being tracked by the Grawl, that maybe, hopefully, the Grawl were close, that this whole plan was going to work and cause enough of a diversion and all that. I guess didn't work out fantastically for him.
That's so funny that he's like, Silgar's such an idiot that he told us that these guys are being hunted. They'd kill him if they knew what he just said. I really love that detail that the Iraq were peeing in the fire so that they wouldn't soil themselves when they got killed. That's the kind of stuff that really makes me love this series.
Yeah, very good little detail. And then, of course, Torvald getting quote-unquote killed, and then this reveal that he hasn't been, thank God. Fantastic stuff.
Yeah, one of my favorite characters, and you absolutely hate to see that kind of stuff when it's a character you like.
I like the introduction of this other prisoner. He seems intriguing. We'll see if he's able to barter his way out of this situation as well.
Would you like to know more?
Press X. Would you like to know more?
Yeah. Karsa getting this face tattoo while he was knocked out. The escape prisoner tattoo. One of his defining features.
Apparently.
Apparently, some of us remember.
Some people remember that stuff, but not me. Not this guy.
Receiving the details we needed to connect the blood oil to Odotarl.
Oh, yeah. That's a good point. That was a question I remember asking you when I first started reading. It was like, what's going on with these Teblor? Like, why can they do it? I guess this is one of those clues as to why they can, why magic seems to slough off of them. I'd love to see if it's even more, if it's all the Teblor. And I guess by this little detail, maybe it is. Maybe a lot of them are resistant. To what extent, I guess? Who knows?
I think back to when Ralik Nam was given the Odotarl dust and was warned, if you use this, weird stuff's going to happen to you. And what those other side effects actually are. Is it the increased healing? All of this absorption through exposure to it. They may not be taking blood oil on a regular basis, but even through mining it, you're getting it on your skin. It's getting into your body, because that's what Ralik did. He rubbed it onto his skin, and the skin's the largest organ on your body.
Mm-hmm.
So I do wonder at these add-on effects, is that helping them?
Yeah.
It also makes you wonder, the people mining it, the prisoners, why aren't they having some like superhuman effects of mining it?
Well, I wonder if that is just a Teblor trait, the healing and all that, and this is just the anti-magic component.
Possible.
But I kind of wonder, and maybe it has something to do specifically with mages, why they say mages go crazy, they go mad. And maybe it just has to do with their ability to control magic, the Warrens and stuff, that Odotarl affects them in a particular way. When other people, the Teblor, they're ingesting it, they're not going crazy. He's not an insane person.
Part of me thinks that the mage is going crazy. If you get so used to having the life of a mage, it's almost like having an additional sense and losing your hearing, losing your sight, losing your sense of taste. Core parts of you, losing them after relying on them throughout your life could be pretty traumatic. And maybe losing that is a contributing factor to them losing their mind.
That's a good point. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Very good.
Seeing Silgar and Damask in stocks, you love to see it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree.
All right, great job today, Dane.
Good job. Do you have any final thoughts?
Don't even.
Having read through already, and you kind of start to remember what's coming, I'm just, again, really excited for some of the things that start to unfold in the next bit of this chapter.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what happens here with this escape attempt. Is Karsa finally going to actually be able to not be a slave for a little while? More than 3 or 4 days?
Right.
Are we going to move on from the life of a slave? We'll see.
Yeah, I hope so.
All right, thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.